Chance, you're talking about this tumultuous upbringing that you had and just probably a lot processing at the age that you were. Or can you look back and see that any of that stuff contributed to, creating one of the most successful game franchises of all time?
So when I moved down to Indian Harbor Beach, it was just like, my parents are getting divorced, just kind of out of nowhere. And now I'm going to live with my mom and some random dude I didn't know, right? And so I basically, spent a lot of time just locking myself in my room with my Tandy 2000 computer. Basically, I would go into games on my PC. There were these two games called Gorillas and Nibbles. And Nibbles was Snake. Remember Snake on the Nokias?
Yeah.
Same thing. And it was written in basic code, which is, basic code is pretty basic. Like you can read it and kind of figure out more or less what's happening. Mm-hmm. I would basically reverse engineer this code and try to figure out how to make my own games.
Welcome to the Legacy Angel Network Venture Lounge, where nothing ventured is nothing changed. For Matt Helmenthaler, press 1. For member services, press 2. For real raw startup stories, press 3. For all other questions or concerns, please wait on the line in our
Good evening, everyone. I'm Matt Helmenthaler, and you're listening to Venture Lounge, after-hour conversations with founders and investors. These are the stories, insights, and conversations that you aren't going to find on the company website. Because the real lessons you learn in the startup world, the risks you take as an entrepreneur, the highs and the lows, the moments in your journey when no one else believes in you right before you break through, those are the moments that you just have to hear for yourself. So grab a drink and listen in to the men and women who are changing the world. Welcome to the Venture Lounge.
Welcome back to Venture Lounge, everyone. Thanks for calling in. I'm Connor Sherman, here as co-host with Legacy Angel Network founder Matt Helmenthaler. Matt,
hello.
Thanks for sitting in, and we're really excited to be sitting across from a friend in the gaming industry, creative director at Good Dog Studios, among a few other ventures, as well as, like we were previously talking about, one of the co-founders of Infinity Ward in the Call of Duty franchise, little tiny franchise, if anyone's ever heard of it. Chance Glasco, thanks for coming to the lounge.
Guys?
Yeah.
Good.
Cheers, man. Welcome.
Yes. Yeah. Cheers from a distance here, bro. Oh, you go the distance, Chance.
You're committed. You're committed.
You're committed, man.
I like gadget arms.
And all the way to Brevard, man. Thanks for coming back.
Back home, I guess, right?
Yeah. And you guys have a little bit of in common with that, yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny how the world works, right? I'm at an event, my first one, over in Orlando.
Yeah.
At the
That was your first time?
That was my first one.
Oh, cool.
That's the
Orlando Tech Council?
Orlando Tech Council.
There's a few acronym tech organizations out there.
Yeah, just a couple. Yeah. But yeah, so I'm at this event and I'm meeting a few folks, and I think you came up to me actually.
Yeah, I think we were actually waiting for a drink together. We hadn't talked.
That's right.
And then I reconvened with you because Charlie was like, "You got to meet this guy."
Yeah.
And then he brought me over.
And then it was like,
I was like, I recognize from standing next to you.
Yeah, we go way back.
Tall guy
We're
with
like
a beard.
cousins. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so that's where obviously I met you, but I didn't realize until we started talking about it that like you're from Brevard County. Like this is your homeland.
Yeah, I ended up in Brevard County through some crazy events. I was actually technically kidnapped to Florida, and that's how I ended up in Brevard County.
What?
Yeah, so...
all right.
Go and elaborate on that.
No, elaborate or don't.
Like, how do you end up in Florida? Well, for painkillers or getting kidnapped. I don't know. I'm glad I didn't come to Florida as a 6-year-old for painkillers. That would be bad. Anyways, I love
this
Florida.
is so dark, but it's great.
It is.
This is great. Yeah.
Domestic. Just to preface my childhood, you've got my biological father and mother divorced when I was like 1. My biological father married new stepmom. Stepmom's ex-husband married my mom.
Oh,
like a swap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So. You can see where that would go.
It's like a permanent episode of Wife Swap.
Yeah, or like Jerry Springer. For like 18 years. You know?
Oh wow, man.
And so it was one of those, like, it was technically, so I had to go see my dad And, you know, at the time he had some drinking problems and it was just a bad place to be around, right? You know, no violence or anything, but just a really bad place for a kid. So I'd come back as like a 3-year-old, 4-year-old on the weekends, you know, upset because the state of Oklahoma said I had to go there. And so as a result, my stepdad, I was like, you know, went and secured a job at Cape Canaveral working at USBI, which was a NASA contractor that did the solid rocket boosters.
Oh, wow.
And so we disappeared in the middle of the night. The only people that knew where we were was my grandmother and then my aunt, who was in Decatur, Alabama, because we went to Decatur for 6 months in this whole process.
Oh, wow.
Once my stepdad secured the job, we moved to Brevard, and I went to Titusville. And so grew up, started out in Brevard, living in like Section 8 housing, like in some questionable parts of Titusville, right? Some good times, and I was, you know, technically a missing, kidnapped kid till I was 9.
Wow, man.
And then detectives found me, did a big court battle. I think the court was actually in Rockledge. And just the state or the, at the end they decided that I could stay in Florida, but I had to go to see my dad once a month, or for a month out of the year during the summer. And so I did that through my, you know, early teens, but still stayed here. Went to, you know, Hoover Junior High.
Yep.
We had the same science teacher,
Which is nuts.
Mr. Carpenter.
Mr. Carpenter.
Yeah, who's your neighbor, right?
Shout out to Mr.
Shout out to
Carpenter.
Mr. Carpenter.
Mr. Carpenter, you need
What's
to be
up,
watching
Chad?
this. That's
You
right.
need-
That's right.
And yeah, I ended up growing up beachside. We're actually first Titusville, and then my mom got divorced again when I was like 11 or 12. That's how we ended up beachside. And then went to Delora for like 6 months, which you know, I didn't have a good experience there, but it was all the same kids I went to Satellite with, so I think I was just unlucky.
Right.
Because I had a really good time at Satellite, but for some reason the kids at Hoover were nicer. But I think it was just like coincidence more than anything. It's the same demographics.
I went to both schools. I went to Delora and Hoover.
Yeah.
And definitely the kids at
Hoover were nicer?
They were nicer.
Really? Well, it is. Maybe they're more like military up there.
I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know. Everybody at Delora just seemed kind of like pissed off in general. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
But including
yeah.
the
It was the
teachers,
only
but,
time I
you
was
know.
bullied, like
Yep.
my whole life, that I could think of, like seriously bullied. But yeah, anyways, then went to Full Sail. I didn't even know it existed until like my junior year. Found out they had a school that does like animation and digital arts and recording arts, all the cool, fun entertainment stuff. Checked it out.
Were you like always interested in that, by the way?
Yeah, I
Doing
grew up,
something-
you know, playing video games.
Right.
And then, what's that?
Right.
Yeah, so I grew up playing video games, and then also, you know, Jurassic Park came out when we were kids, and seeing the dinosaurs, that made me really interested in animation. And so I knew I wanted to do animation, either games or film, or like special effects. So I went out there, Full Sail. 15 months later, graduated, decided to head to California to look for work. And I got there, had a horrible like month out there. Found like nothing. I think I got offered extra work on X-Files, but that's not what I was going there to. I wasn't going to be a really underpaid actor, you know. So, and then so went there for that and did not find any actual work. Was coming back to Orlando because I was staying there for Full Sail, and stopped in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is where I was born, and got an internship working on Medal of Honor Allied Assault, which was the first Medal of Honor that was ever on PC.
I'm familiar, by the way.
Played,
Yeah.
Did you play Allied Assault for PC?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was, it was the best. It was the best one.
I beat the PlayStation version.
Yeah,
Did you
the
really?
DreamWorks
Let's
one.
go.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
That's the one.
And so that's kind of what happened. Is that's how I got in the industry. I sent an email with like 1 or 2 animations to the one animator there and said, "Hey, I will do anything to get my foot in the door. Just like give me some work, I'll make it happen." And they gave me an opportunity, yeah, that's how I ended up in Tulsa again and lived there for a year and a half, 2 years before. Well, what happened is we worked on Medal of Honor. We didn't really like the guy that we worked for, and so 22 of 30 of us decided to leave. We formed a new studio called Infinity Ward, and we actually connected with EA at first, right, who we were working on Medal of Honor, because EA didn't want to work with this guy either, right? And so they're like, "Hey, we'll help you, you know, come out of that studio, start a new one. You do Medal of Honor Spearhead, which was the expansion pack." And so we started working on that. And then a few months into it or so, EA, or maybe it's like 4, 5, 6 months, EA said, we're going to absorb you into our mega office in Bel Air over in Los Angeles into a team of like 200-something people. And we were a team of 22. And we're like, if you put us in a studio with like 200-plus other people, you're going to lose the magic that we had on this last project.
Right.
And so there was a lot of debate, like, what do we do? And in the end, we're just like, we're not going to do it. They didn't pay us for the work either, like the previous few months.
Oh, geez.
And we had to scramble and look for another publisher. And so, Grant, Vince, and Jason, were the main heads of the studio. They were scrambling around looking for, another opportunity. And so Activision was basically like, look, we know you guys don't want to be absorbed into a mega studio. We allow our studios like Neversoft to stay independent. Can you make a Medal of Honor killer, basically? Can you make a game that competes with your last game? And so we had to start over and make another World War II game that would compete with Medal of Honor that was also on the Quake 3 engine. But all the work we'd done to the Quake 3 engine for Call of Duty was owned by Activision, or was owned by EA. So all the engine work we did on the first Call of Duty had to be redone from scratch.
Just because I don't know, man, like the Quake 3 engine, is that like the equivalent of what's Unreal or something today?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
So Quake, have you heard of John Carmack?
Yeah.
Yeah, so John Carmack, Wolfenstein, id Software. It was mostly his code, right?
Okay.
Because he wrote the code for the Doom engine, for all the Quakes. And so a lot of the games that you played in the early 2000s, even the 2010-ish, and probably even now, was base Quake 3 code. It was a Quake 3 engine where other developers got it and they started developing on top of it, adding more features.
Right.
And so I would be surprised if the current Call of Duty engine didn't have any Quake 3 code in it, even though the game is more than 20 years old, I think.
Oh yeah, they've all
Like,
built
like
on
20,
top of the predecessors.
Yeah, yeah, and it was always like every time we'd release a new game, Activision would market as a new engine, right? And then people would be upset. They're like, no, it still has Quake 3 code in it. And to me, I see it's like a car. If you say an all-new Mustang, they don't scratch everything they learned from 40, 50, 60 years of Mustangs, right?
Right.
They take the last and they reiterate on it and they make it better, right? So,
Just again too, because I didn't know before. Really, my wife and I attended Shawnee State in Portsmouth, Ohio, and it was like really well-known gaming program there, Game and Simulation. And so all of our roommates were gamers, and it was like, that's when I'm learning that these people are like, it's a lot of calculus-based physics. It's a lot of complicated equation. You know what I mean? It's not easy coding. It's not just slapping some paint on something.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
It's tough to be an engineer. Like I'm an animator. Was an animator. Now I'm
But even that is like there's a lot of labor-intensive work that's
it's a lot of attention to detail. And animation's different because there's not one skill that transfers over to animation very well. I mean, there's acting, and there's like directing. Those are the two things that can help you as an animator. But otherwise, it's kind of a skill that we don't ever use unless you're an animator. Like recreating human movement, usually human movement, and doing it in a way that no one notices it's not human-like. Because we look at humans all the time.
Right.
That's why you have the whole uncanny valley thing, where if you see, a bad CG character, it's almost real, but it's so close that it's just creepy. And that's the same thing with animation.
yeah.
We look at people walk every day. We see people walking. So
Right.
if you animate someone walking and it's 1% off, people notice.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
With like I've heard things about the gaming industry that it's just a difficult, fast-paced, time-sensitive kind of environment. How would you describe your experience, getting into the industry yourself and then starting your own studio?
It's tough. I'm happy to be back to like a very small team. Because when we started, like I said, 22 people. By the time you get more than like 65, 70, you start just not knowing people's names. And you start to lose that tight chemistry. And there's also diminishing returns. You can't just double your studio size and have a gun or a game that's done, twice as fast. It's just not how it works.
Right.
And so with Good Dog Studios and Martial Arts Tycoon, we're a small team. And even after raising more, we plan to stay pretty tight and small.
That's awesome.
Because I don't want to have 5 different people managing people. I want everyone to be hands-on for the most part.
Yeah, there's so much to be said of that. That's something that we even found here at our network. Like, I don't care how many of these lounges that we put across Brevard, or even expanding into Orlando, like we're talking about doing. We have a nice small team. Everyone loves each other. Everyone knows what each other's thinking. We work well together. We're more efficient that way. We may add 3 or 4, 5 more people in the long run, but I mean, that small intimate unit, we can get way more done than maybe a group of 50 or 100.
Yeah, I basically want like a baseball roster would be my perfect.
Yeah.
You got 9 full times, and then you have some people in your bullpen that are all over the world that you need to call on.
Yep.
But yeah, small's good, I think.
That's awesome.
It's also like, from an investment standpoint, there's obviously a lot less risk going into an indie studio where, you can finish a game for a few million versus a AAA game where if, you don't have more than 100 million, you're going to have issues, so.
Yeah.
And then just build from there. You start small and then you just kind of slowly see it ramp up. That's what we did at Infinity Ward. 22 people made the first Call of Duty. When I left, it was, now there's thousands of people working on it. It's kind of insane. Multiple studios.
What was that like, man, when you, because, so many people that are going to watch these podcasts, both now and our future audiences, so many of them like have an idea, and they want to go out and they want to venture out, they want to do something, you came from a really successful project, and then you and these 20 other 30 other people were like, yeah, we're out. That had to be kind of scary. You really are venturing out into the unknown.
Yeah.
Like, what was that like for you? What were the conversations like? Did you have any hesitation? All of that stuff.
Yeah, when we, I remember we all kind of got together in a room and we're like, here's the situation. EA's not paying us for what we did, and we're not going to work with them. And we kind of met and we decided amongst the group, do we go to EA or Bel Air or do we not? And I was actually, I'll admit I was wrong at first. I was, I think it was night 20. No, I was 21 when this happened. And I was one of the few voices who was like, hey, let's just go to LA, And I'm glad that it didn't go that way, because it wouldn't have panned out the way it did. I was taking, I think, the safe route. Eventually, as a group, I was convinced otherwise, and I wasn't upset that we decided to just take this huge risk of just scrambling for a publisher. But yeah, going with Activision was the right choice.
It sounds pretty cool that, like, most people, when they're taking a risk, most people find themselves doing that alone to begin with. It's really cool that you had support
by people that were wiser than me, older than me. I was the second youngest in the studio. Yeah. And so we made the first Call of Duty. Halfway through, we moved to LA, because it was really, at the time, really hard to find people who want to move to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now it's easy, because they're like, oh, what, I have a house for $300,000?
Right.
What? and there's cool stuff there now. Yeah. And I think what's happened is we had so much overflow from major cities to medium cities that all these, a bunch of these medium-sized cities in the middle of the Midwest are now interesting places because people have moved out there and invested. So,
obviously, probably the bulk of the work in other studios were in LA. Was that the case, or?
Yeah, I'd say, LA, Seattle, Dallas are the major hotspots for game development. San Francisco Bay Area.
Chance, you're talking about just kind of this tumultuous upbringing that you had, and just probably a lot processing at the age that you were, finding a love of video games early. Do you think how much of that contributed, or can you look back and see that any of that stuff contributed to creating one of the most successful game franchises of all time?
I'd say just me getting involved for sure. So when I moved down to Indiana Harbor Beach, it was just like, my parents are getting divorced, just kind of out of nowhere. and now I'm going to live with my mom and some random dude I didn't know, right? And so I basically, spent a lot of time just locking myself in my room with my Tandy 2000 computer. I don't know if it was a Tandy at the time. I might have a new one by then. But basically, I would go into games on my PC. There were these 2 games called Gorillas and Nibbles. And Nibbles was Snake. Remember Snake on the Nokias?
Yeah.
Same thing. And it was written in basic code, which is, its basic code is pretty basic. Like, you can read it and kind of figure out more or less what's happening. Mm-hmm. And so I would basically reverse engineer this code and try to figure out how to make my own games. And so I started making text-based adventure games with like zero graphics, where it's like Zork, Return to Zork. I don't know if you remember the old games where it's like, you are in a room, there's a door on the left, there's a cat who's meowing, and you're like, pet cat.
I bet you'd be great in D&D.
Yeah, I played a lot of Western RPGs.
Yeah.
And so I would start making my own text-based games. Like the one that comes to mind, did it with my friend Tommy that I grew up with, and it was called The Dentist Who Took Over Compton. And it was a 1990s gangster rap text adventure game.
That's amazing.
Where you're like this random white dentist from like the Hamptons that somehow gets stranded in South Central Inglewood.
Please tell me that's a game that can be played today.
No, I can't find it. Yeah, sorry.
It's lost in the hard drive somewhere? Or what?
And it's probably not going to be found ever. And so you basically, the goal of the game was to recover all of your dental tools. And you're encountering all these like knockoffs of 90s gangster rappers like Snoop Horky Dog. And I was like 15.
Is this in the hopper to be recreated?
I have to get licensing probably. There's a lot of.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of licensing.
I think it's going to be very expensive. But if I just do it as a parody, I don't have to get licensing. I guess it was kind of like a text-based GTA in its own way.
I feel like that's something that Snoop would be in on, the little I know about him.
I think he would. He plays Call of Duty.
Does he?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Who doesn't, Chance? I mean, seriously.
Have you met Snoop?
I have not met Snoop Dogg. Kanye West, probably not the most popular person to bring up right now.
I'm about
Kanye West before he was in the Nazis.
No, yeah, we can edit this. It's fine. No.
Right.
So, no. So before he was in Nazis.
He played our Modern Warfare 2 release party or 1. This is before he was. This is back when he was still like pretty underground-ish,
Yeah.
But never Snoop Dogg. Oh, I hung out with Rakim Wu-Tang.
Yeah, Wu-Tang. Okay,
Wu-Tang.
cool.
Yeah,
Really?
that was
No
at
way.
LA Film School.
What were you guys playing? Were you guys playing something together?
This was at Los Angeles Film School. Actually, after I left Call of Duty, I was just doing consulting work for them. LA Film School was like sister schools with Full Sail.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I met. I used to play a lot of. You guys into baseball at all?
No.
Okay, well, there's
I used to collect baseball cards.
all right, there's a pitcher named Cole Hamels who was on the Phillies, won the 2009 World Series, and we connected at Infinity Ward, exchanged gamer tags, and we used to play multiplayer Call of Duty together a lot.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, I'd meet a lot of athletes at the studios because they would, have some time off. They'd be visiting the city for a game or something. And they'd want to come get a tour, see how the game's made.
Did you have any idea that it would be as successful as it was when you guys were working on it? Did you feel like it was like innovative, groundbreaking?
We felt that there was some magic, but it was a fairly slow ramp. Where I think Call of Duty 1 for PC sold like 800K or something, not even 1 million, probably over 1 million eventually. And then Call of Duty 2 was a launch title for Xbox 360, which was a big boost. So I think it might have sold a few million there. Maybe more. And then by the time we hit, I think Modern Warfare 2 was like 29 million copies.
Oh,
right?
jeez.
So it was just kind of just up and up and up.
You said one of them sold. I saw a quote from you, or Full Sail had the quote saying something about it outselling. Was it Modern Warfare 2 that outsold Avatars?
Oh,
and
we beat
entertainment
Avatar box office numbers.
Yeah, which is
I don't know if it's a fair comparison though, because it doesn't count DVDs that later come out.
okay.
But at the time, it sounded really cool.
It does sound really cool.
Now it's like it's what you expect. You're like, what? A movie in a movie theater?
Yeah,
better than this 7th most popular game that came out last week? Yeah.
I mean, what were your hours like working on this thing? I mean, were you all like full charge in? I mean, this was your life.
There was a lot of 12-hour days, but unlike some other studios, like I want to say maybe it was Insomniac, they would crunch like something like 10 or 12-hour days, 7 days a week. And we would do, when we were crunching, it was like 12-hour days, 5 days a week. which is a lot more manageable because you still have 2 days off.
Yeah.
But that wasn't all the time. That was we had better. I'd say that like Jason West was an incredible manager when it came to like development, and because of that and other people involved in that, we didn't crunch as much as other AAA studios.
So what was that collaboration like process like? Where you guys have success on this game, and then you clearly are trying to move on and create something bigger and better. And then, what did you feel like your main like contribution was to that process?
So at the beginning of pre-production, after we shipped a game, I'd say pretty much anyone in the studio that wants to be involved in ideas around the next project can come in, throw out their ideas. We would have, it basically looked like a unorganized Kanban board, right? Of just note cards with like, wouldn't it be cool if this was in the game? Just random ideas, not about the story. Just like, hey, it'd be cool if you could fast rope onto a dam from a Black Hawk helicopter, and there's smoke, just all these random ideas, right? And so we would throw all those ideas on that board, and then we would, as a group, go through and talk about them and throw out the ones that we didn't like as much. And then the designers would get together and take the remaining cards, and they would go through and figure out what works and what doesn't. So it was kind of a process where everyone's involved at the beginning, but then you kind of have to give the reins to the designers who are going to be better at designing than the non-designers, right?
You got the research going into this thing, Chance. How are you guys like pulling data points to make sure that because I heard you talking on another interview that like the way obviously that you load a clip into one gun is different than another. How are you capturing those subtle details and making sure this looks legit? Because when Modern Warfare 2 came out, it really was like a wow kind of experience, like playing it for the first time. It felt like where you were in the desert with them.
Yep. So I was spent 90+% of my work was working on the V models, which is the model in front of you, the first-person weapons, anything that happens. I would say I did more gun-focused than, say, the other random things outside of the guns. And so I would, with others, with the sound designers, with maybe another animator or two, we would go out to Henderson, Nevada, because we were in L.A., very hard to get a hold of the weapons we wanted to use. So we go to Henderson, and we'd rent all these weapons, from pistols to fully automatic, 30 cal, 50 cal Barretts, like ridiculous weaponry. We'd set up sides of beef for like the sounds, glass, wood, all the different things when you capture sounds of. The sound designers would probably put like 15 field mics out there and record the gun sounds from all different areas, right? And so I would focus on actually using the weapons, shooting them, feeling their personality. Because like in a first-person game, your character it's not really you. It's your shoulders down in the gun, right, or whatever. Because that's all you're seeing. You're not seeing everything else, and so you have to give that personality, and that's really hard because almost every weapon, every gun reloads like one of two ways, and most of them reload one way. And so, imagine if you have like 4 different AR-15 variants. How do you make those feel unique? And that was a difficulty of doing weapons animation. So the easiest way to describe like the whole character in guns would be, I think in MP5, you've got that bolt release on the front. And so the classic like slapping the bolt down after you reload the MP5, or inserting the magazine in the AK-47 angled and then clicking it in. Those are all real characteristics of the weapon. You have to accentuate those to bring life into those guns so they feel different. And I still think today, I been playing a lot of Warzone and DMZ. Mark Grigsby's back there, who was my boss for most of the time there. And they're still killing it. Like, they still have the best feeling weapons in any shooter, as far as I'm concerned, the reloads and everything.
You feel like, yeah, man, that's crazy.
So freaking cool.
Just the lengths that you guys are going to get your references is like.
Yeah, we did a lot to make it unique. But yeah, that was, then eventually became lead view model animator. But this whole time, from I would say like probably Call of Duty 2 and on, at the end of a project, I would actually do PR and media. So with game, you have like you've got pre-production, you've got development, and then you have alpha, beta, and gold. Gold means release. And so by the time you're in like maybe halfway through alpha or towards the end of alpha, as an animator or an artist, you're not putting new content in the game. You're just fixing little things that people, like the testers, find. And so artists typically towards the end of a game cycle have more time off while the engineers are scrambling trying to fix bugs. And so they would send me, like the heads of the studio would go to like the UK or like Germany or Japan, and they'd be like, who's going to go to Brazil? Who's going to go to Estonia? Who's going to, like Italy? And so they would send me out, and I would do tours and just work with media, do interviews, go to all the, Gamescom, all these big events that would happen all across the world.
Oh, that sucks, man. You have to go to all these exotic
Staying
places.
at really nice hotels.
Nice hotel.
Yeah.
Man, it's...
So even though I was focused on animation, I got a lot of experience in like PR and media, which is a cool opportunity that you don't normally get when you're working at a AAA studio as a developer. Because developers typically aren't, on average, not the kind of people that are comfortable or want to be in front of a camera.
No, 100%. Well, so I've worked with a ton of engineers.
Yeah.
That is rare. It's super rare. You're kind of a unicorn in that way.
Yeah, I like to be a unicorn.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by the Legacy Angel Network, a community-first investor group finding and funding companies together for the greater good. As you hear from the guests on the Venture Lounge podcast, it's obvious that the venture capital world is full of challenges, uncertainties, and risks. Angel investing is no different. Finding, vetting, and investing in early-stage companies on your own can be overwhelming. The Legacy Angel Network is a community of investors that gather monthly, learn from each other's experiences, and leverage our collective skills to find great companies and help them succeed. What makes Legacy unique is our concept to exit support process. We don't simply fund startups. Legacy's investor network is directly involved in the overall development of our portfolio companies throughout their business lifecycle, ultimately resulting in a higher percentage of positive exits. If you're ready to jump into the exciting world of angel investing and become a member of Legacy Angel Network, visit us at legacyangelnetwork.com/venture to learn more.
That's actually the first time I've publicly talked about the whole kidnapping thing.
It's a very calm place, a very safe place.
Like, pretty much everyone involved in that is not alive, so I don't feel like there's anyone like upset by
Chance,
talking about it.
We don't want you getting in trouble or anything, man, but
FBI watching me.
you're not like on a list or anything, right?
I can't go to Russia.
It's like, this guy knows way too much
Yeah,
about weapons.
I don't even remember No Russian level. The whole remember no Russia. Remember no Russian. Remember from Modern Warfare 2? Yeah. Where they, absolutely. Yeah. I'm on their shit list.
That did it, huh? It didn't take that much.
That was my roommate. That we can talk. Are we rolling?
No, just keep going.
All right.
Yeah,
you remember
keep
No
going.
Russian?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's that was my roommate's idea. And I thought he was crazy at first, but then it made sense. So just to give the backstory, at the time, maybe still, maybe the most shocking scene, violent scene in a video game, right? And the whole idea is within the story of Modern Warfare 2, you had this Russian ultranationalist that wanted to bring Russia back to its former glory. Sounds kind of familiar. And basically they set up, there was 3 or 4 Russians that pretended to be Americans in the story plot line, and they went into the Moscow airport and just started mowing people down. And normally these kind of plot points are just like loading screen text, right? It's just something you tell the player, this really horrible, tragic thing happened, and then players are like, I don't care, I read some things that happened, bad things happen, okay, whatever. There's no emotion. So really the only way to emotionally impact people in the way that they should be impacted is to actually put them there in that experience.
Yeah.
Because we didn't want horrible things to just always happen without there being any feeling from the player. One of the things that we wanted to do with the Modern Warfare series is make people feel uncomfortable. Like the C-130 levels were supposed to make you feel uncomfortable because it's so disconnected, And so to further that story, you are an American who's pretending to be Russian while the Russians are pretending to be Americans. And so you're infiltrating their little group, and you go this elevator, and the doors open, and there's like Russian TSA, and they just start getting mowed down by the Russians. And it's the only level in the entire game, and any of the games I worked on, where you can get through without shooting a single person, which is the ironic thing, because you could actually shoot around people and pretend that you're shooting people at the Russian airport and finish the level, as long as they believe that you're actually doing it, right? You just have to act it.
Huh.
But in the end, doesn't matter how you play it. Makarov, who's like the head Russian dude, he just shoots you at the end, because they knew the whole time that you're an undercover American. And so that level got leaked before the game was out, with zero context. I mean, even with context, it's very shocking. But
how
imagine,
does that even happen? Like, how does something like that get leaked?
I think it was one of the media people had a video or something. I'm not even sure. I don't remember how it happened. But yeah, it got
Is there
leaked.
someone that we need to hunt down? That's the question we're
Yeah,
asking.
I
That's
wouldn't
really
mess with the Russians.
No. I mean the person who leaked it.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Connor knows some pretty shady people in Portsmouth.
Yeah. Some guy in a double wide out in Akron. I tell you what, reckon. But yeah, so that got leaked, and I remember BBC News was all over it. At the time I was traveling, I was in the UK. It was actually the first time a game had been revealed at Leicester Square, which is like their Hollywood in the UK. And BBC was like grilling me on like this violent level. The Parliament was meeting today about banning it and all this stuff. And I think just that week before, they were like voting on drone strikes and killing actual people. So I'm just like, look, guys, this is a video game. It's a story. I know it's shocking. You can pass the level. You can actually skip the level. I think it was the first the first game where we're like, this is a very shocking level. Do you want to skip it? And you can say yes and not even play that entire level.
Man, how are you? Yeah, especially in the heat of the moment. That's wild, Leicester Square and everything. Like, how were you combating that or dealing with like the flood of questions that you're getting from people and the ethics of it and everything? You know what I mean? Like,
it doesn't. Back then, I mean, there's been a lot of studies since then, and overwhelmingly show that video games do not cause people to be violent. Right.
Right.
Back then, there were a few, and I would point to those. But honestly, through media training. And with Activision, they want you to speak to a Activision rep, which is good because I didn't have to answer it. But in general now, if it comes up, which doesn't come up very often now, like violence in video games, I just point to the studies. Like, hey, give me your email. I can send you a bunch of studies, over 20 years or so that show that there's not a link. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then in tandem with that, I have to mention this because it was like so impactful when the game came out. But it was one of the was one of the later Modern Warfares. It might have been Modern Warfare 2. That the online multiplayer and everything was full go at that point, right? Am I thinking correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, so like one of the card shops back in Ohio, just little tiny card shop, they had all kinds of games they were reselling and that kind of stuff. But when that game came out, that like one of my buddies, Tyler, that was running that shop, that was like revolutionary for his business.
Yeah.
Like he took the game and, started running some little tournaments that kind of like snowballed into like these massive, 10 grand pot. Yeah, exactly.
Very early esports.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That surely Modern Warfare was a massive part of that revolution.
Yeah,
what I mean?
I played Allied Assault competitively in like an official.
Did you?
Yeah,
Okay.
They didn't know I worked on it.
That's amazing.
I didn't use any cheat codes, and we didn't end up winning, but we did get pretty far.
That seems like kind of a little bit of an advantage chance.
No, because think about it. Now, I don't have 8+ hours to play video games.
Right.
So people that are playing competitively, they're playing games like 8 hours or so.
But I'm saying all that to say, like, if you want to see the impact that things like this that you all have made creates, you really just the economic impact it had in like little rural communities like the one we're from was like nothing I had ever seen before at the time. You know what I mean? People coming from Columbus and Lexington, Cincinnati, 2 or 3 hours outside
driving
of
for
it. Driving to play Call of Duty with other guys.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's a very communal thing.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing about I think most people around our age understand this. Not everyone, but there's a lot of community in games. There's a lot of social aspects. And for instance, you're here, right? And if you're going to hang out with your friends in Ohio, how are you going to do it? You're going to get online probably with them and play a game because that's the only way you can really hang out. Especially now with VR multiplayer gaming, if you play something like Onward in VR, think of Onward as more like, I'd say more of a Ghost Recon than a Call of Duty, a little more tactical, right? You feel like you're there with your buddies, like crouching behind a wall, shooting. You're moving like a real person. You're in VR, and when you're in VR, you form these memories, almost like a really vivid dream that you had. Where when you're out of it, it's not like I was playing a game. It's like, oh, I was there with you and we did these things. That's how your brain takes it in because you're fully encompassed in the experience.
Your involvement with the franchise, the Call of Duty franchise, being one of the co-founders, was like really heavy. How do you transition to, hey, I want to do new things? What did that look like?
Yeah, so to go to where I am now and what I'm working on now, 2009, 2010, going through some personal stuff, needed to find an outlet for stress. And I was, started watching a lot of, I think it was Dream and I forgot the other, Pride, the old school Japanese MMA, which was honestly like Japanese MMA in the 90s, I think way better than anything, early 90s, early 2000s, I think way better than the modern MMA we have. Right? They had these like walkout dances and everything, like anime style. It was crazy. But anyway, so I started watching old school MMA. This is back when there was no rules other than no eye gouging and no fish hooks. But you could like kick someone in the nuts. You could kick someone in the head when they're down.
I remember the original UFC. It was different weight. I mean, the weight classes too. There's like little guys versus guys that are like 400 pounds. It was like this. It was no holds bar.
And when you start seeing these little guys, like for instance, the most famous obviously would be Hoist Gracie. Hoist Gracie, 175 pounds, 6'1", built pretty much almost exactly like me. Was not the best Gracie by far. He was probably an average Gracie, maybe even below average. But they wanted to use him as an example of what jiu-jitsu could do. If you take someone who's 260 and just stacked, they're always going to blame it on the muscle. Oh, he's big and strong, right? But you take the lanky, skinny guy and he starts choking out people that are 300 plus pounds. They're like, oh, this is serious.
Yeah.
And so I started seeing that, like early UFC, and it became less. At first, it's shocking. MMA, or especially early MMA, very shocking. But you start watching it, you start to see the technical aspects of it, and especially when it comes to grappling. And so it piqued my interest. And then when I found out, there was Jeff Smith, who was, I think, a purple belt at the time, and Ryan Lastimosa, artist and a designer, blue belt. It was like, hey, there's a jiu-jitsu school opening like 3 or 4 blocks down from our studio. You should go check it out. And so I went to this. It was at the time Legacy Mixed Martial Arts.
Love the name. Love
yeah,
the name.
yeah, like that. I should have worn that actually, the Legacy shirt. I still have it. And so I met Alberto Crane for the first time. A veteran black belt, fought in King of the Cage. And he just showed me some basics, like, hey, this is how you escape mount. Like when someone's atop you, this is, I was like, oh, this is really cool. This is really interesting. And so I think from an analytical standpoint, engineering standpoint, it was super interesting. And honestly, like the thing about jiu-jitsu is when someone's trying to choke you out, like all your problems go away other than that person's trying to choke me out. And so from a stress perspective, it was almost like it was like therapy. It's, like non-consensual yoga.
That's the best description of jiu-jitsu I've ever heard.
It's like folding clothes while people are still in there. There's a bunch of there's a lot of
yoga.
Yes, you like yoga? All right.
Cheers. To that
lots
one,
of names for jiu-jitsu. There's also Mexican ground karate. I'm not sure where that one came from, but
Chance admittedly, everything that I know about jiu-jitsu is just because I'm a disciple of Rogan, you know what I mean? And he's always talking about it.
Honestly, I feel like probably about a quarter of the people that train jiu-jitsu now, probably because of him.
Probably,
because
man.
he's always promoting it.
Right. But he was even saying, like, talking to Dave Portnoy from Barstool or whatever last week, and was talking about how, like, he thought he was, or, Rogan thought he knew his stuff with, like, was training in Muay Thai or Thai fighting at the time. And then when he started doing jiu-jitsu for the first time. It was like revolutionary, and that's really like that's kind of the centerpiece to all these martial arts at this point, right?
Yeah, I started jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai at the same time. I was better at Muay Thai. I'm built for Muay Thai, right? Tall, thin, you know, have more reach than most people in my weight class.
Yeah.
I don't like getting hit in the face, and I like the technical aspects of jiu-jitsu. It's basically, it's like a flow chart. It's like engineering your way out of body problems, you know? You're like, my arm's here, this arm's here, my leg's there. I need to get to this position. How do I get to that position so then I can set up an attack? And I've never been good at sports. Like, you know, I was slightly better than average at baseball, but I played baseball a lot. I was all tall, gangly, not coordinated. So jiu-jitsu is one of the things where it's like, you know, it's not really about my natural athletic ability. I can do well just getting good at the techniques. And I still don't think I don't consider myself good at it. I mean, yeah, if a random person that doesn't train, sure, great. But I'm always training with people that are way better than me. So it doesn't really let your ego inflate too much. And that's what's great about it is people will come into the gym. If they have an ego, you know, they'll get tapped by someone 50 pounds lighter than them. Either they lose the ego or they leave the gym. Right. You know, like one of those two things is going to happen at a good jiu-jitsu gym. So.
Yeah, man. I love like the whole mind-body connection. I like nerd out over that whole thing. I mean, Matt and I played basketball one day a couple weeks ago, and I feel like we're closer because of it. You know, closer.
I'm still a little bitter.
How many elbows did you throw?
Yeah, I know that's my problem is I can't keep my elbows down.
And so this whole jiu-jitsu thing led to what, you know, I'm doing now. I took, you know, two of my favorite passions in games, jiu-jitsu, combined them into one. So I grew up playing a lot of tycoon games, Roller Coaster Tycoon, you know, even stuff similar like SimCity. I've always been into simulation games where you have all these systems that are engineered and they're interacting to play out a story rather than a scripted story. Because to me, the most interesting games are where you see something that wasn't written, it wasn't scripted to happen, but because there's so much really well-made game systems, they just kind of interact and they play out. The ultimate version of this would be Dwarf Fortress, which was just released after 20 years, finally with graphics. So, yeah. But anyway, so I played a lot of those games, you know, versus shooters. And, you know, training jiu-jitsu, I was like, you know, every fighting game is about the button mashing. You know, it's about you doing the fighting. But there's so many fight fans out there, right? There's so many fight fans, and they're not just into they don't just watch the fights. They're interested in, like, what gyms are they training at, like, everything behind the scenes. And so when you spend a lot of time on the match, you're like, this would actually make a really good, like, tycoon simulation game. You know, you're deciding, you know, how to upgrade your gym. You're dealing with different personalities. You've got these random NPCs that come in that, you know, like every character is procedurally made, right? So every character basically has a personality and a life history, and every character is unique. So you might have someone that came in, and their life history is they were like an abused kid, right? And because they're an abused kid, they have a higher percentage chance of having, for instance, a resilience trait, some kind of trait that makes them more resilient to fighting because they went through a bunch of crap as a kid, right? Or, you know, for instance, you have someone that comes in that has high strength, high agility, they're very athletic, but they have the bully trait. Well, this person might come in and win some fights and you know, get some money for your gym, but if people are getting injured because you let this very athletic bully into your gym, maybe that's not a good idea, right? And so you're basically managing the fighters that are coming through, you're upgrading the equipment, you're starting off in the favelas of Rio de Janeiro. When I was in Brazil, I lived 2 streets from this favela, Morro Santo Amaro, and it's one of the, I guess you'd say, more pacified favelas in Brazil. I wouldn't recommend you just walking in there or anything. It's a bad idea. But you're not necessarily going to be greeted with people with, you know, AKs or something when you get there. And so some of my, a couple of my best friends were from that favela, my best friends in Rio. And so something that I, you know, realized, like when we see movies, I mean, Call of Duty is guilty of this, games, every time you see the favelas, whether it's City of God or Modern Warfare 2, it's all about the police and the bad guys shooting each other, the drugs, and those are very real things. But people don't realize that most of the people in there are just good people trying to get by. You know, just like any other poor area, you You go to any ghetto in America, and most people are just trying to make it, right? And there's definitely a higher percentage of people doing bad things, but it's still a minority of the people within that area.
Right.
And so one of the things I want to make sure that we're trying to do with this game, or we are doing with this game, is to represent, the people from the favela as not just all drug dealers, all, involved in crime, that there's like regular families there just trying to make it happen, right?
There's a thoughtfulness to that.
Yeah.
That I really appreciate. And I had no idea that you guys think through the gaming in that way. I think that's inspiring.
Yeah, and we have, we have some. It's not just Americans involved in this game. We have our environment artist is in Vancouver. We have our engineers in Seattle, designers in New Hampshire. Character artist is in Rio de Janeiro, probably like a metro stop or two from that favela. We have another character artist contractor who's in Sao Paulo. We have a advisor, also the kind of a cultural advisor as well, that was actually involved in doing like demographic studies in the favelas in Rio. And of course I live there too. My wife's Brazilian, so we have a lot of input from Brazilians, because we're gonna piss off somebody, of course, but I'm trying to make it as, honest as I can.
Well, you can't make everyone happy. Just because you pissed somebody off doesn't mean you did something wrong.
Yeah, but I'm probably more likely to piss off some rich white person in San Francisco than someone who actually grew up in the favela. Because I can guarantee you, like, very few people there will be offended.
Right.
So,
Chance, that's cool, man, that you're like, your art is imitating the experiences you're having, and then you're also being intentional about how you influence life with the things that you're making, what would you say, just from that lens of like knowing what goes into a good game, knowing what goes into good tech, good systems, you say, do you think that played into just your connection to the investment space and starting to look at other companies, how to use that experience to understand like what's a tech company that's going to exceed, what's, you know what I'm saying?
now it just feels like instinct for the most part, just working in the industry now for like 22 years, not including the dentist who took over Compton.
That one,
I think it needs to be included.
That's worth another 10 years of experience right there.
Yeah.
And so, it's that's the thing about consulting is you do it long enough. You work in an industry long enough, when you become a consultant, a lot of the stuff that you have to, information you have to give, it's like common sense. Seems almost too easy sometimes. But just because you've been around the industry for so long, you just kind of pick up experience in all areas. Even though I wasn't an engineer or a designer, I can sit in those meetings and understand most of what's going on in the conversations, even though I'm not going to be the person writing the code.
Yeah, so that's definitely influenced. What other than instinct, can you itemize that for us a little bit? Like, what's it look like a tech company that you believe in? What are the pieces that you're looking for, I guess?
Yeah. Well, I would say, obviously, most things I would say are probably obvious. Experience. And it's not everything, because there's some hungry people that aren't very experienced that do great things. One of the issues I see is, like, sometimes you see people put together, like, this all-star roster, right? And it's almost like if you took, like, all the best soccer players and put them on the same team, you're like, oh, this team's gonna be great, but that's not how it works. There's chemistry, then there's people in their prime. Like, a lot of people, after they've done their big thing, they don't have as much energy left, where there might be someone less experienced that is more excited, that's actually going to do a better job than the person who has a huge resume that everyone knows, right? Yeah. So it's kind of a mix of finding the people that have the experience, that still have that passion left, and the people that are newer and probably have even more passion, but might have less experience.
Yeah, there's something to that, and like I think all streams of life and in sports even. Like, so I know you guys probably don't follow a lot of basketball.
I just got back into the Magic after like 20-something years.
Okay, cool, awesome.
Yeah,
So,
Bull got me into the Magic.
Okay.
He's like a magical unicorn himself.
I actually got to back at the old arena. I got to meet some players and stuff like that when they had a private cigar club. They don't have one anymore, but where I was going with that was the Lakers, right? You have basically 5 guys starting who will be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And they suck. Like, sometimes you can grab, but see, not only are you grabbing the most talented, but you're with them, you're bringing their egos.
Yep.
And you're bringing, and so sometimes, at least what I've seen, there's not a lot of humility in the room, and then you see that when they come together to perform.
Yeah.
And so you don't get the product you wanted.
Yeah.
You sell tickets, but you don't get the product that you want.
But if you get some of the young players, the people that are drafted first, second, third round, they're really good, but they respect these veterans that are leading the team. So to me, it's better to have those earlier draft picks mixed with the veterans to create that happy balance.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Chance, you got to talk about some of the other stuff you're doing, man. You were mentioning some like ecological things that you're involved in.
Like I said, I went to Full Sail University. Gary Jones, who was the president of Full Sail, he was involved at the Nature Conservancy. And he worked alongside Rosemary Mann, who I work with directly at Arshrock. And so Arshrock is this entity of the Atlantic Council. And just a little background, Atlantic Council was formed post-World War II to tighten European and U.S. relations. Now it's like an international think tank. Typically, they're working with like energy, weapons trafficking, like all these big global political issues, very opposite the game industry. But there was a donor, Adrienne Arch, down in Miami, and she donated a bunch of money along with the Rockefeller Foundation to open a climate resilience division. And that's where Arshrock got started. And so most people, when they think climate, they think mitigation. Like, how do we, pollute less, all these things. Climate resilience is like, we're already screwed. How do we keep people safe, right? And so we deal with anything that's climate related and keeping humans safe from it, but we do have a very large focus on heat and heat waves. One of the things that we're doing, which actually plays into Martial Arts Tycoon, is our center created a heat wave naming and categorization system just like hurricanes. Like, if a hurricane's coming to Florida, one of the first things you ask is like, what's the category? You're like, oh, it's category 4. It's like, oh shit, we better get going, right? But if you're like, oh, there's a heat wave, and then someone's like, oh, how about this heat wave? It's like, I don't know, dang old hot, man, I reckon. Like, there's no...
that is the Florida mentality.
Exactly.
Yeah, you described it pretty well.
There's no, like, a heat wave, there's no...
Welcome to Florida.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, man. Well, dang mole's jumping extra high today.
I like your Florida voice.
It's kind of Oklahoma meets Florida. It's kind of Florida man and an Okie.
Very Florida man.
It's like King of the Hill meets Florida. And so they create a system where it's like, oh, it's a category 2, and its name is Bertha. It's going to burn your face off, And so what's cool about, how one of the avenues we're using to reach, like, the whole idea of Arshrock is we want to reach 1 billion people with climate resilient solutions. 1 billion is a lot of people, and so that's through games, right? So we're using games as our main avenue. Within Martial Arts Tycoon, because you're training outside, we have a temperature. Like, for every day, we take the median temperatures of Rio de Janeiro, and we kind of randomize off from that. We add some noise. But every day, there's a very small chance there could be like a heat wave, right? And so if there's a heat wave, there's going to be a warning, and it says, oh, there is a category 2 heat wave. Its name is Jose. And so based off of the intensity of the heat wave, you have to actually protect your fighters. So if it's a small heat wave, you might just like, okay, I've got some drinking fountains, some hydration, we're good to go. If it's stronger, maybe you need to add shade. Maybe you need to shut down the gym if it's a really extreme day, right? If you don't have any shade to train in. And so through that, when people play the game, they're going to see this whole category 1, 2, the names. And then once this system gets released amongst the world, when they see it, they're going to already know what it means because they saw this in a video game, right?
That's really cool.
Yeah, and so California, Gavin Newsom signed a bill to start adopting it. It's being piloted in probably like, I don't know how many cities, probably close to 10.
Wow,
but
man.
I bet you within 5 years, it's just going to be the common system when we talk about heat waves, because heat waves actually kill more people than any other natural occurring event, right? And the reason we don't think that is because if you die from a heat wave, you don't die from a heat wave, you die from a stroke.
Right.
Or you die from something related to heat. It's not like I get hit by a porpoise that came out of the Indian River and smacked me on the face. Death by porpoise.
Yeah. In the evening news, I mean, Craig Richardson's not getting on there and saying, "Oh, today Mrs. Smith died because she was hot." I mean, no one's doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, so we kind of overlook heat as something that affects people. But yeah, so involved in that, and
When's your game? By the way, plug it, man. When's your is your game out or is it coming out?
no, it's our game. We haven't announced a release. Our plan is to do an early access. We'd like to roughly a year from now or so. But like I said, I'm not making any official statements. It's very ballpark.
Yeah, okay. I mean,
you piss off a bunch of people. They're like, "Why isn't it out yet?"
But you could do it for all of our viewers.
Yes, if there's anyone
we
that
just
would
started.
Yes,
There's a lot.
If only there were any investors watching this podcast, that would definitely help this happen within a year. And yeah, so initially we were going. I guess it was kind of you would call it a big indie budget game, like kind of bigger for indie, but definitely far from AAA. Now, just because you know how the economic climate has not been so great the last couple of years, we're kind of taking a different approach where we're doing it more divided into, for instance, we're doing Brazil and Jiu-jitsu at first, right? And then we'd like to release other releases that go with the base game. So after that, it could be Muay Thai in Thailand, right? So now you're in Thailand training Muay Thai, and then wrestling and in the U.S., UK, and boxing. And then you could say, for instance, maybe drop MMA and bring all those together. And based off of what you have, different disciplines, you can teach your fighters in those disciplines, right? And so it's kind of a strategic release, I guess you could say that. But yeah, the idea is start off with a really good, solid base game. I want to do Brazil because it's interesting. Like, we see a lot of games in New York City and Los Angeles, but Rio de Janeiro is a very interesting location.
What's your wife think about this?
She likes it. Yeah, she thinks it's cool. She'll tell me where we're wrong.
But that's helpful, right?
Yeah.
That's
Like last week, she was telling me about this girl who kind of has like a little bit of a fro. She was like, it should be bigger. I'm like, the problem with you have to have everyone's head when you start adding extra really big hair. Now you're walking through a doorway and the hair is clipping through the door or something, or if you have any headwear. And so, she's obviously looking at a lot of the things that
Aesthetics, yeah.
the aesthetics, right? But yeah, she's very helpful. So.
And you guys have kids too?
No, we don't have any kids.
No kids?
No. Just some furry cats.
Chance, so is everyone else in your studio in Orlando, or are you guys all over the place?
All over. So we're based in Orlando, and the long-term plan is to basically, we have, like I said, remote people in Vancouver, New Hampshire, and Seattle, and Brazil. But a lot of the younger talent we're going to be working with is coming out of UCF, out of Full Sail, and there's also existing talent working in Orlando. So I see us slowly scaling our Orlando presence to the point that we do have a physical space in Orlando. But the thing about Orlando versus the world is 8 billion versus 500,000 to choose from, right? So if you want to make a really, really good game, it's better to pick amongst 8 billion people.
Yeah, completely.
So you combine and so the idea is, we have that base in Orlando, and then hopefully as we evolve, attract some of the contractors to actually come and work in Orlando as well.
Which I think is awesome. I mean, one of the things that we really push hard here, being this little local network, is we want to help grow the local economy. Through we're a community first investment group, and so we want the activity that we do. We want to do it with the community, but we also want to do it for the community. And when you start doing the kind of activity that you guys are doing, that really does help build a local economy.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an exporting of a product, an importing of a dollar. There's job creation, all of that stuff. So I mean, kudos to you guys, man, for just not only looking out for education and the environment, all those other activities, but on the economic side, you guys are making a huge impact.
Yeah, I think that everyone obviously when it comes to Central Florida, Orlando specifically, most people outside of the area think Disney, they think tourism, which is it's obviously there. But anyone that lives in Orlando, we almost feel like there's two cities that are connected. There's everything 10 minutes south of downtown and further, which is tourist land and the rest. And a lot of people that live around downtown, we just don't go very far south, right?
Yeah.
But this, like Central Florida, including Brevard, we have amazing engineers. We have amazing technology. There's so much more talent here that doesn't necessarily have the PR that Disney World has. Right. So
yeah.
What do you, and just being as tapped into Central Florida as you are, what do you see coming down the line, VR related, engineering related, your industry?
I'm seeing a lot of crossover. But before, if you looked at military simulation stuff, early 2000s, it looked horrible. It looked like it was 20 years behind. And now you're seeing a lot of crossover between people that study in games to work in like simulation. And so military, or just like simulation in general, because Orlando is actually the simulation capital of the world as far as the most sim companies, VR, sims, aerospace, right? So you're going to see more of the crossover, the crossover of that talent, and you see that also from entertainment, other forms of entertainment and games, actors coming over to work in games. And so there's just going to be more of a merging of our different industries, I think. Talent going between the two.
I think that's good. In the environment that you're operating in, and like the culture you're a part of in Central Florida, what we're all a part of here, it is a bunch of people that are starting to realize that they don't really have to stay in their lane. Like they can make other things better with their skill set. And that's the power of something like really encompassing like venture capital, where there's people from all these different backgrounds, angel investing, people from all these different backgrounds that come together to make other industries better. I think that's what we're doing here.
Yeah. I think one of the most frustrating things that I've seen or just experienced the last several years is that how much I feel like we had such stimulus, like we had so much economic stimulus for so long, and quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, 4, bailouts, all this stuff, that in the end, the people that benefit from that are mostly the rich, right? They end up with the really cheap loans where they can get tons of money and invest, right? And I feel like that kind of created a lot of the blockchain, metaverse, crypto boom. Because VCs were like, we got all this money, what do we do with it? We got to find something to get excited about. And I really believe in blockchain as a tech, but as we've seen, 99% of it's been crap, right? And the most frustrating thing is meeting VCs, and not so much now because blockchain and crypto has tanked, is how they're just throwing millions and millions of dollars at these random companies that would put up like a splash page on the internet with some guy in some other country made like a Unreal environment, and they're like, this is our metaverse, and they're just throwing tons of money at these things, and they don't
with no due diligence.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
blows my mind.
And then when you bring something that's been tried and true and proven over time that isn't the hottest trend, where it's like, hey, you pay money for a game and then you get to play it. Crazy, right? There's no crypto coins. There's no. While they're all distracted by these new trends, I think they're missing out on a lot of opportunities that aren't necessarily the latest, greatest, hottest, trendy thing, but they're proven. They've been occurring for many years and they've been successful.
What I've seen a lot, at least in the angel space in Brevard County. I'm not going to speak to Orlando, but the angel space in Brevard County, they're looking for more of the sure, proven thing here, hands down. Like our little network and our little neck of the woods, our little part of the world, like they want to see things that are tried, true, proven, that they can rely on. And there's not. I mean, they believe in like you said, the technology of blockchain. They love it from a security aspect and maybe from even a transactional in some cases. But they're way more into, created a product. I shipped it. Someone bought that product. I shipped it to them, and then I created a job and brought back $1 and made that investor some money. They love that. They love that. That's simple.
I think that sometimes people get really distracted with the new hottest thing. I always use I actually use a jiu-jitsu metaphor for this. There's this guy, if you watch the Rogan podcast, you've probably seen on there, John Donaher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bald guy, always wears a rash guard.
Oh man, baller. Yeah.
He's like a philosopher
He does
of
always
jiu-jitsu.
wear a rash
Yeah,
guard.
always. And he kind of, made the whole leg game in jiu-jitsu more popular, right?
Mm-hmm.
So classically in jiu-jitsu, we're always focused on there's the guard, right? And you've seen this in like UFC where basically someone's on their back and they've got their legs wrapped around them, right? And then that person's on top, right? And they're going for arm bars on the bottom and whatnot. So traditionally, everyone focused on passing the guard, getting around the legs, and then getting into a mount position or side control, and then attacking. And this guy, John Donaher, was like, well, you're ignoring 50% of the body. You're ignoring the first half. Like, you're basically, everyone's focused on this, and you're ignoring this, right? So for me, I see these really big gaming trends. When we were doing Modern Warfare, there's all these first-person shooters that were modern day, just lemmings, just follow, follow, follow. Well, everyone was ignoring some other popular genres. For instance, tycoon simulation games have been around for a while. They're not, they typically don't sell 30 million copies like a Call of Duty, unless you're The Sims, which would be like 200 million copies. But a lot of investors are ignoring some of these, fourth or fifth most popular genres of games, right? And there's a lot of hardcore gamers that are really into these kinds of games that are really hungry for it, but they're not getting the love and the attention they need. So I think that's why the idea of behind a martial arts tycoon is interesting, because you're merging this MMA martial arts community with another community, which are like tycoon gamers, right? And we actually did a market survey on our game. I put together a little video and a description of the game. And one of the reasons we want to do this is I had this theory that even though most people that watch UFC aren't necessarily roller coaster tycoon gamers, I bet you they're wanting to cross over because the idea is so fresh and new, because it's a fighting game unlike any other fighting game that's existed, because it's more of management. And so I think it was something like, even though 30% of martial arts and MMA fans are normally interested in tycoon simulation games, in our case, 82% were interested, right? So we almost tripled.
Wow.
So we have this demographic, which is people who play these games already. They play Roller Coaster Tycoon, Planet Coaster, who will play it, because they'll play any tycoon game, right? 2 Point Hospital. It's a game about building hospitals. Sold, I think, around 3 million copies or so.
Jeez.
But how many hospital fans are there? You go to someone, you're like, hey, you into hospitals? They're like, what? It's like, I watched General Hospital with my mom in the 90s.
And I know a lot of people that are trying to avoid hospitals.
Yeah, but if you ask someone, hey, are you into MMA? Are you into UFC, martial arts? Like, you ask 100 people, a lot of those people are going to be
hospital's not a buzzword.
But you can make a game about building
Okay.
hospitals and sell 3 million. What if you make a game about something that's actually popular?
Right.
Yeah. But I think they're interested at that point, man. They're interested in the craft of it. Like, I like that you're identifying those kind of lanes that aren't fully filled with those missed opportunities, because it really is like when you're playing Hospital Tycoon or whatever. I think they're interested in the systems, like how the game
The
feels.
system, exactly.
Like,
so those people are into those systems no matter what you're doing, right? If you're doing hospitals, if you're doing a zoo.
It's like a creative exercise. Like, you're doing this.
You're managing a business, more or less, right?
Right.
But then when you combine the people that are interested in the actual topic, fighting, you have kind of these two markets now, right? So I think in the end, the overall results were in the 80-something% of people surveyed out of 1,000 were interested in the concept. So, so I think it's a unique experience that I'm excited about releasing.
Chance, bring us home here, dude. Like, what Matt hinted at earlier, but like, tell us, for the kid that's listening right now that's wanting to get into your lane, and you can see how profitable that's been for you just from like what you've drawn from your experiences and like gotten into the angel or the investing space, making an impact on the environment. Like, it started and ends with your gaming career, right? So how do they get into what you get in? What kind of advice would you give them?
There's so much to the game industry, so there's pretty much a job for every kind of person. It's not just art jobs, not just engineering. There's marketing, there's sound, there's everything. So typically when someone approaches me, it's like, hey, I'm interested in making games. I say, okay, what are you good at and what do you like? And if they're good at the same thing that they like, that's a really good start, right? If you're like, well, I'm good at math and I like math. All right. Like, how much do you like math? It's like, I love math. Okay, maybe look at engine programming. You know, that's super hardcore. But, or they're like, I'm not good at math. And here's the thing: is you don't have to be, you know, even some engineers aren't that great at math. It depends on what you're doing. If you're writing like rendering code, you better be good at math, pathfinding. Most engineers are, but some aren't, right? Or they say, for instance, I'm an artist, so I'm like, okay, so there's animation, there's sound, there's modeling, all these different things. And the great thing is you can learn everything online for free now for the most part. So I say, if you're, say, in high school, middle school, you know, go on YouTube, get the Unreal Engine or Unity or something, get the Unity Engine, and start doing tutorials, and just keep doing it. But a lot of people are not, they don't discipline themselves that well. So those are the people that should probably look at going to a school like Full Sail. I mean, even if you are disciplined, you can gain from a school like Full Sail or another gaming school, right? But don't wait until college. Like, you know, honestly, we should be teaching kids to code in elementary school.
Yep.
It should be like a second language.
Absolutely.
Because that second language, as a programming language, will probably benefit them more than most second languages they would ever study that aren't programming languages, right? It teaches people to think. A lot of people don't think logically. They're not good at problem solving. So even if they don't end up becoming a coder, they've been taught this logic that helps them actually solve other problems outside of programming.
I have one final question. What drives you? Like what, like, you know, the core of like who you are, like what drives you, and, you know, is there something that you kind of just live by internally that like kind of just moves you forward, pushes you forward?
I would say like everything that I work on now, you know, any project I'm involved in, any serious project, it's more than just like a way to make money. You know, it's going to have some sort of impact outside of just like the money aspect, right? Because once you kind of do, you know, get to a certain point where you've had a certain amount of like, you know, superficial success, right? Where you can pay your bills, have a little extra, you get diminishing returns after that. Like if you give someone, you know, $1 million, right? Or you give them $100 million, you know, the happiness level of the person that received $100 million is probably not going to be any different or much different than the person that received $1 million, right? And so I like to just work on projects that have, like I said, some other impact. So for this game, you know, I have some connections out in Rio where I would love it if we could, through this video game, actually sponsor some kids in the favela to go train at some of these schools that are nearby that are typically too expensive for them. Because jiu-jitsu is not it's not a cheap sport. It's not as cheap as, say, like football, soccer, right? And so one of my goals is to, you know, there's a couple foundations that we've connected to, haven't really done anything yet, but like get some kids sponsored. Because there's this kid, Igor, that I met through YouTube, actually. A YouTube channel that I think is a Danish guy, just went to the favelas in Rio and just got tours from people that live there. And this guy, Igor, he's basically our story. Like, I was like, you were our main character. You know, he grew up in the favela. He got into jiu-jitsu, and that's what kept him out of, you know, getting in trouble, right? And so now he's, I want to say, like, maybe like a 19-year-old black belt, you know, and now he's running his own social program in his favela. Right?
Oh, wow.
And so obviously we need some monetary success to like be able to fund that. But honestly, it doesn't take that much money to sponsor some kids to train. So basically just like, if the end result is loving on others, then it's good for me, you know?
That's huge, man. That's everything. It's all about people.
Yep.
That's cool. Well, cheers, man. Thanks so much for coming.
Thanks a lot.
Yep.
Appreciate you,
Cheers,
man.
y'all. Shane's Glasco, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys.